Hey, what's up, YouTube? Thanks for tuning in to Hognose One for yet a video on topic of genetics. We'll just get into some pretty cool natural history and genetics topics here. I think it's fun. I've loved learning about this. I've learned this for a long time, a lot of these various elements here. But I want to talk today a little bit about the founder effect. If you know anything about founder effects, usually it stems from the bottleneck term. You know, bottleneck is just a reduction in the gene variability within a population, usually because of natural forces, maybe a forest fire, maybe some climatic effect, meaning that there's some type of colder season that diminished something that used to exist in a certain area. According to genetic studies from the National Human Genome Research Institute, the founder effect is a genetic phenomena that occurs when a small group of individuals separates from a larger population, resulting in a reduction in genomic variability. We've seen that with humans before. There's certain groups of people that have bottlenecked themselves. They refuse to find spouses, mates, whatever you have, partners, and as a result, the genetics are limited and there's tremendous detrimental effects. One such population exists right here in Texas, where a particular religion has come in and set up, over the last 50, 60, 70 years, it's extremely limited. There's a limited gene pool to select from. Of note, there's a lot of genetic deficits that result in cancer. So real high cancer in that particular society. There's also dwarfism. There's also a lot of just genetic mutations that are not good because there's not enough influx coming in. I think there was a king at one point in time that was the same way and just wanted to keep his bloodline pure, so he would only marry or mate with other members of his own bloodline, and as a result, there were just severe issues. So it's always beneficial to have genetic influx, meaning genes coming in from the outside. So the founder effect is kind of like founder stock. If you've ever heard that term before, somebody said, my founder stock is from this place. Usually, at least in my experience, that was stock that was found from a specific locality. That was something that was generally like with gray-banded king snakes. There was Mexican hognose for a while that were pulled or taken from a certain locality and bred to produce whatever that local or locale-specific trait expressed as. And a lot of them had a lot of genetic variability. I can think, for one, if you're familiar with Lampropeltis alterna, that's the gray-banded king snake. You know, one of the localities, the Christmas Mountains locality, was beautiful animals. Another one was Black Gap. And depending on the size of the sample or the founder stock, there could have been some really strong genetic variability, some really cool stuff. One interesting thing about the founder effect and evolution as it is a rattlesnake population that exists on an island called Santa Catalina Island, and that is in the Sea of Cortez in the, west of Mexico, somewhere west of the Baja Peninsula. And of curiosity, this particular species of rattlesnake is the only rattlesnake in the world that really doesn't have a rattle. So should we call it a rattlesnake? But that's what its name is. And it has developed and evolved through time to not have a rattle. Some scientists believe that it's because it's semi-arboreal. It hunts for its prey, amongst brush and leaves, and what rattles would clash or make noise that could expose that as a predator. They also believe that there could be fewer ground-type predators, maybe like bobcats or foxes or skunks or other things that we have here in the U.S., in North America, South America, that rattlesnakes really have to defend themselves against. So the rattle acts as a warning. But it's curious how those have evolved. Now, there's another population study that was done on the collared lizard. If you've ever seen them locally here, they're called mountain boomers because they sit on rocks and they boom off the rock as soon as somebody comes by on a horse or in a car or on foot or whatever. But anyway, in this particular study, a collector noticed that every time big males were removed from the population, it gave way to a lot of smaller males to come in and occupy And the big males were actually consuming the smaller males and limiting the population. So it was just curious how nature had its way to affect this certain population. He noticed that the population was much hardier. The population was much more bountiful. There were a lot more in the population when the biggest males were removed. They do that a lot of times with elephants in Africa. They're always allowing a certain take of larger males because they do give way to smaller males to come in and occupy that space. The only negative side of that is sometimes you get an imbalance because you remove animals that have what we call creature fitness. We've talked about that before. That's the ability of an animal to survive based on genetic variants and based on phenotypes. You know, if there are things that do not help that animal to survive, you know, we would consider those mutations. If they do help the animal to survive, we would call that genetic fitness, where they would have everything they need to survive and survive well. So it can be a give and take. We see that in the United States with especially like tarpon. Tarpon were overfished in Florida, and it really affected the population, not only of them, but also of other species. Bass, largemouth bass, we see the same thing there. When the largest ones are removed from a population, generally the smaller fish, some species of smaller fish, don't grow as big because they're not constantly having to evade the bigger, more predaceous bass. We see that with elk and with deer. They constantly have to have genetic influx because if those largest animals with the largest antlers, the best racks, if you will, are removed from that population, sometimes it's a detriment to the entire population being able to survive well. So I just thought this was interesting here. Hopefully some of those topics are cool to you. Look those up. Sometimes there's some really fantastic rabbit trails you can go down to on genetic inheritance and influx and founder stock and population dynamics. As always, thanks for the like and subscribe, and I will catch you on the flip side.